Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, what do you do when you want to buy a micro brand watch, but you also want to be on a budget, but you also want a pilot watch, but you also want a collaboration watch, but you also don't want to spend too much money? Well, you go to Mark's Watches at Long Island Watches, the Islander range of watches. A range of watches which contain so many watches now that there is always going to be one for almost every single person out there. Now, obviously, the things that I mentioned there aren't going to be everything you guys wanted, but they were actually something that I wanted. So as a result, I ended up buying this Hemel collaboration watch, the Hawkeye, the ISL 205. This one only cost $289 US. And I think for that amount of money, I end up with quite a good watch because there's a lot of good specifications. It's quite individual, it's kind of interesting, and there's some things about it that make it really worthwhile looking into. There really is some pop to it as well. And it's been really nice to be able to own another Islander watch. I owned one many, many years ago. It was a great watch, and it's really nice to get my hands on another by Mark from Long Island Watches. So let's check out this watch in a full in-depth review. Let's flip around and let's check it out. So here we have my Islander Hemel collaboration watch, the Hawkeye, the ISL 205. And on paper, I think you get a lot for your money. $289 US gives you a Islander watch in collaborations with another micro brand, but you also get the no date variant of the Seiko movement, the NH38, 100 meters of water resistance, BGW9 lume, and a year warranty. But is it actually any good? Well, let's check it out. So this came in three variations from Islander. There's this one here, which is the special edition. Basically, the special edition has the orange on it, but there's two other variants. And I'll stick them on the screen now so you can see the two other variants. Now, those other variants are unlimited, so you can buy them now. This one here only came with 50 maximum. So I end up with number one, which is pretty cool, number one of 50. So let's check out what we got here, because what does stand out? Well, obviously that orange does. It really does pop, and it's one of my favorite features of this watch. And to be honest, it's the reason I bought this limited release version, because it really looks cool. Having that sort of inner chapter ring in bright orange really sort of frames that dial, but also makes it really pop. The rest of it is a matte black. Everything is then printed on with lots of lume. You got these sort of two dots above that sort of central triangle that has the Islander logo and the Hemel logo. What I'll try and do now is I'll put that in the center of the screen, and I'll zoom in now so that you can see that. A really cool little feature. Two other colors that are also listed on there. We've sort of got that orange counterbalance on the second hand, and the hour and minute hands are blue with lume inside of them. I do like how that second hand is nice and long. I do like that sort of inner chapter ring and how it then sort of lists the other numbers as well. It looks quite cool. The center cross as well really adds to it, and automatic written just there. Now, covering that is a piece of sapphire crystal. It is flat, and it is quite nice. You know, I think there might be some anti-reflective there. It sort of seems to be quite easy to see, so I'm going to assume that it is an anti-reflective sort of surface there. But whilst we're sort of looking at the dial, I want to check out the lume on this one, because the lume is actually really good. So let's throw in a lume video now, have a bit of a look at that lume, and see that it is actually quite a good feature of it, having that BGW9 lume. And the thing that really stands out to me about that lume as well is the second hand. Look how bright that is. Really nice having a full lumed second hand. But it's also in a really nice size package. So we're looking at a case diameter of 39 millimeters. The width of this watch is 11.6 millimeters, lug to lug a really nice sort of compact 45 millimeters, lug width of 20 millimeters, and the weight size to my 6¾ inch wrist, or approximately 17 centimeters, is 137 grams. So we've got a couple of different surface types on this watch. The bezel there, the solid bezel, obviously it doesn't move, is high polish. I really like how it slopes away from the crystal there. It's quite nice. Then onto the top of the lugs there, they're also all polished, so they sort of blend in together. And then the case profile is actually quite cool. It has a sort of vertical brushing, which I think is quite nice. It breaks up that polished bezel there, but then there's a bit of sort of an undercut there, which is also polished. So it's sort of a polished, brushed polish. So I really like that sort of look. It's actually one of my favorite views of this watch, looking at this thing, seeing the polished, brushed, polished. I think it looks really, really cool. There is a crown at the 3 o'clock, as we would expect. It is unguarded, and it's a little bit small. I do find at times being a little bit more small, but it is screwed down, which gives you that 100 meters of water resistance. Being the Seiko NH38 movement, there is manual winding, no ghost position, which is fantastic to see, as well as then hacking. But let's check this one out in the time grapher and see how this no date Seiko is performing. So as you can see, it's running at 26,600 vibrations per hour, which is what we're expecting from the Seiko movement. Beat error is a little bit higher than I would have liked. I like that sort of around about 0. However, realistically, anything under 1 is not too bad. Amplitude, not too bad. That's actually quite healthy. And running about plus 4 seconds a day. So realistically, on wrist, 4 seconds a day, I'm very, very happy with that. Now we do have a signed crown as well. It's got the Islander logo on there. And then we switch to the bracelet. And overall, I actually really like the bracelet, but there is a bit of an issue. If you watch the first impressions of this one, you would have already been sort of hearing me talk about this, but it's all brushed and you've got those polished lugs. And you'll see even on just that angle, it just looks so different. The brushing's really good and the polishing's really good, but it just really conflicts to the point where the brushing almost looks like a different color. So it's a bit of a shame really, because it sort of then doesn't feel like it integrates very well. However, from a physical integration versus a visual integration, fits really, really well, really snug inside that sort of watch head there. Solid end links, obviously. Solid links, it's like a H link there with an extra link in the middle. We do have screw links if we look at the correct sides, and you can see that it has a milled clasp. This is one of those sort of standard milled clasp with a safety latch and double pusher, perfectly fine, and 3 levels of micro adjust. On the back, we got a polished case back there, and we've got some things listed looking a bit like a military watch, including the Islander Cross Hemel, sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance, and if you can see there, limited edition 01 of 50. So I got number 1, so that's pretty cool. Now, how does this one look on wrist? Well, I think as you would expect from a watch this sort of weight, this sort of size, it sits really nicely on my 6 3/4 or 17 centimeter wrist. It sits down quite nicely. It does hover a little bit here and here like some watches do, but that doesn't take away from it at all, because when you're looking down on it, which is what you normally end up doing, it looks really good. 38 millimeters really does sort of suit my sort of wrist size, even though I do sometimes wear some fairly larger watch compared to this one. So what do I like about this one? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, the orange really does pop for me. I think that really helps make this watch. It's really interesting. It's not too much, but it sort of surrounds that dial. And I think it really, really helps this sort of watch. It really does. It's quite amazing. I think more watches should actually have this. I really like how they've integrated the logos into those 2 dots, showing you both the Islander and the Hemel. Quite like how the lume is applied as well. It's really bright. I love that second hand that's all loomed. It's very neatly applied as well, so it looks really, really, really good. The bracelet is actually really nice, although it doesn't integrate particularly well, but it's actually overall a nice bracelet itself. But what do I dislike about it? Well, there's a couple of things. That integration between the sort of brushed and the polished just doesn't seem to suit. It sort of seems like a bit of an after sort of thought, which is a bit of a shame. The blue hands. Now, I didn't really mention that earlier. It's because I don't actually really like it. I think it sort of makes them sort of look a little bit too small, because you don't really see the blue, especially when you look at the watch a little bit further away. Plus, I don't think it needs that extra pop of color. It's got the orange there. I don't think it needs the blue there, and it sort of gets a little bit lost on that background. I do like blue on hands. I do like blue on hands for sort of pilot style watches, but this one I don't think it works quite as well. I'd prefer them just to be all loomed, so they would end up looking a little bit bigger, and they'd probably be able to see them a little bit better, and then you wouldn't have that extra color on the dial. The crown, it's a little bit small and a little bit fiddly to play with. It's easy enough to use, but it is a little bit fiddly. It's also a little bit basic looking. I do prefer pilots having a bit of a crown, like it's a little bit more interesting, like a little onion crown or something. But to be honest, that's actually not something that I'm particularly disappointed about. It's just that it is a tiny little bit small. So what would I change about this watch? Well, basically what I've just talked about there. It'd be nice to be able to integrate that. I would have those tops of those lugs as brushed. Simply as that. Then you'd have a polished bezel, brushed lugs, and then you can move along to another bit of brushing and a bit of polishing. It would just then blend those in, and I think it would create a much more whole sort of watch then. Those hands, yeah, make them all loom. I think that would be a big sort of bonus for this watch. Sort of lift it further, make those hands sort of jump out at you. You've got this orange on the dial that's sort of jumping out at you. Get the hands to jump out at you as well. And although I like 39mm watches, I feel perhaps that as a pilot watch, that might actually be a tiny little bit small. I've noticed this with a couple of pilots that I've bought. Perhaps I would just lift it out to 40, just a tiny little bit more. I think this style of watch really feels like it needs to be a tiny bit bigger. Not a bad thing at all, and I love this case size, so I'm not disappointed in it, but if I had the opportunity to make some changes to it, that would probably be one that I would make. But let's flip the camera around now and let's get back to me. So I really wanted to love this watch. There were so many things about it that I thought popped on screen when I was looking at it online. I really liked the idea of getting an Islander watch. I really liked the idea of it being a collaboration watch. I also love pilot watches, so I really wanted to love it. and I haven't quite loved it. But I do like it. I think it is a good watch, it's a nice watch, but it's not a perfect watch. It does, however, have some features about it that are really, really unique and really make it pop out to me. But I haven't probably connected with it as much as I'd hoped, which does happen to me quite a bit with watches, unfortunately. I think maybe I get my hopes up a little bit too high, and then rather than sort of be bad, rather than being disappointed, no, not just that, it's just a sort of in between. Sort of, I like it, but I'm not blown away by it. It certainly is a great watch though, especially for the money when you consider how much it actually costs. And it is really nice to get it from somebody who you sort of know is going to produce a good watch. And it's certainly something that I'm finding that is going to be very reliable. But am I going to keep it very much long term? Well, probably not. But it has been a really nice opportunity to have it in hand and on wrist. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I really do hope to see you in the next video.